it's kind of all throughout the whole education system and really heavily in graduate schools of psychology and education.
Mm-hmm.
All right. It is Monday, February 16th, and we are live on YouTube. Hello, everybody. It is good to be with you guys again. I'm Leslie Elliott Boyce, and this is the Solid Ground live stream with Christine Siefenwalk, Jennifer Friend, and today our guest is Julie Barrett of Conservative Ladies of America. And Julie, you and I had a great conversation, oh, I guess it was like 2 weeks ago now, about age verification laws and what's going on right now with digital ID. I When I first saw one of your videos, I was really struck by how well you communicated this. I expressed my own sort of naivete around this age verification issue because I've only thought of it as something that would impact people who want to look at adult content online. But as you have discussed and in the work that you do, you're showing that no, the legislation around this is much broader and it will affect all of us. It'll be the next thing that the next level of privacy that we have to give up in order to do any kind of business online, or engage socially online for that matter. So, I want to get into that with you some more here and see what Jennifer and Christine think as well and what questions that they have and our chat group as well. So, hey, Riff Rock, and hi, David LeBoy. Nice to see you guys today. And hi, Jen. Nice to see you too. I guess I should introduce the live stream first. This is something clunky we haven't really gotten a flow of since we lost our wonderful member, Deborah, who was with us for a long time and who took a break last fall. Some people have asked lately, where's Deborah? I know you guys miss her. I miss her too. She had to step away. Social media just gets overwhelming, and I think she needed to focus on some other things in life. So she used to do this great intro for us, though. So Solid Ground is a peer support community for anybody who's concerned about the incursions of critical social justice or authoritarianism, including medical mandates, et cetera, in your workplace, school, social community, online, et cetera. We host 4 groups a week right now. They're all drop-in groups. If you would like to become a member and join one of our peer support and discussion groups, you can go to our Substack, which is Solid Ground Peers at Substack. Or is it Solid Ground Support? Sorry, it's Solid Ground Support at Substack. So this is my usual stumbling through the intro without our Deborah. And yeah, please join us. We also host a discussion group immediately following the live stream. And if the guests can stay and chat, then we love to have them be a part of that discussion. I don't know if Julie has time today to be a part of that, but if you do, we'd love to have you stay after. And it's a members only chat in order to kind of get deeper into the themes that were discussed during the stream.
Yeah.
And as one of our members said, or one of our live stream commenters said recently, this lady only speaks in word salad. Here I am speaking in word salad for you.
They made you doubt yourself and cast a spell upon you.
That's ridiculous.
They did cast a spell upon me. I want to read you guys a really great comment that we got today as well. This is from Mobilize 1886. Said, I would like to sincerely thank you all, Leslie, Deborah, and Jenny. And I'm sure that was also intended to be Christine and Jennifer, for the outstanding work you're doing on this channel. I only recently discovered your channel, and I'll say I've been genuinely impressed by the clarity, maturity, and intellectual rigor you bring to the topics you address. In an online landscape often filled with noise and misrepresentation and downright gaslighting in many cases, it's truly refreshing to hear women engage with intelligence, poise, and directness while courageously challenging some of the more prominent and uninformed perspectives in the space. Your contributions are valuable and much needed. Please continue the excellent work. So that was a wonderful comment. Thank you so much for that. And thank you everybody who takes the time to give feedback on all these things. Oh, Ertbia 7908. Salads are good for you though. Well, thank you. That's good. All right. So, Julie, you have been doing a lot of testifying, and one of the things that you talked about when you testify at these legislative sessions, there's an opportunity for public comment. You're sometimes the only person there who's not a lobbyist or some kind of
Right.
legally required to be there. So there's just not that much feedback from the public on this right now.
Yeah,
Why do
and
you
that's
think that
really
is?
typical with all legislation. And that's back in 2022 when I first testified, the very first time ever in Washington state. I testified remotely. And what I noticed is there were, of course, in Washington, you had a line out the door of leftists wanting to testify. And there was nobody really there in speaking for citizens on behalf of citizens, and so that's really what drove me to be in this space, is to be a voice of the people. And it's something that I continue to see, especially with these tech policies, these data privacy policies that we're going to be talking about today. Every time I have testified on one of these, it is a room full of lobbyists, people from big tech, people that are paid to be in the room. The voice of the citizens is not being heard, and so the legislators are being influenced by paid lobbyists and big tech and any other special interest groups. And so that's why I feel it's really critical for me, since I can and I'm desired to do it, to go and be speaking in these spaces on behalf of citizens.
Well, I can imagine I've been at some of these kinds of hearings in Olympia when they were trying to take away some of our vaccine exemptions. I went and I was there was such a huge crowd of people there. So many parents were upset about some of those vaccine exemption removals. I must have been a couple of thousand parents lining the halls, spilling out all around the Capitol building. And there were a few different sessions that I went. I signed up to give public comment. But I remember thinking, please don't call me, please don't call me, because it's really terrifying to stand up. Most people are terrified of public speaking. So can you say a little bit about that process for anybody who it feels like they should do that, but is scared to do it?
Yeah, I always say feel the fear and do it anyway. And every time I testify, I get nervous, I get anxious, I feel I have imposter syndrome. Like, who am I to be speaking in front of all these senators and these legislators? And one of the things that I've learned over the years is most of these legislators that are making laws on behalf of the citizens, they didn't have to pass a test to become a legislator. They didn't have to have some special degree. They just had to get the most votes. And unfortunately, in many cases, that means that we have a lot of lawmakers that don't necessarily have a thorough understanding of policy, especially as it relates to the Constitution. And so then they are heavily influenced by their staff and the lobbyists and special interest groups. And so I would just tell people, remember that the only difference between you and and another way that helps me is when I think about these people were elected to be of service to we the people. They're not above us. They are supposed to be looking out for our interests, not the lobbyists, not these other groups that are there. When we are in that room, we are the most important voice in the room. And everybody has one vote. They don't get more votes than we do, So those are some things that I kind of, some mental tricks that I do with myself to just remind myself that we're all equal here, and none of these people, most of these people anyway, don't have anything special that you don't, and your voice matters and your opinion matters. And so if you're going to go into this space, which I encourage every citizen, if you can, please do it in your state, at your school board, at your city council. And I always write out my remarks, because if I don't, I get up there and I've got my, wheels are turning a million miles an hour. I've got all these ideas kicking around in my head, and I can't go off script because it never ends well. So I always encourage people, write out what you're planning to say and go ahead and read it. That way you make sure that you hit all of your points. And just be respectful and speak to the policy. Try not to be emotional about it. Just stick to the facts. And yeah, that's my advice.
Mm-hmm. Can you say a little bit about what what bills and what legislation you're seeing right now and the specifics. Where are you focusing your attention right now? Is this kind of in every state? I know you're in Florida right now, though, so perhaps you're just looking more locally.
We started in Washington State as Conservative Ladies of Washington. A couple years after that, we expanded to Conservative Ladies of America. And since I've been in Florida, and a lot of our original Washington members have sort of dispersed around the country. We've really been trying to tackle things across the country. With these age verification policies that we've been watching over the last 6 months, I say we're playing legislative whack-a-mole with these policies because they are popping up faster than we can even keep track of them at state level, at federal level. And they're very serious. They're extremely unconstitutional. And because they are supported primarily by Republicans, but they almost always have bipartisan support. And a lot of the parental rights groups, parent organizations have been hijacked by a company called the Digital Childhood Alliance that is backed by Meta. And so they're pushing this policy, this App Store Accountability Act. And they've been having parent groups and stuff put out information about it and support the bill and write op-eds. And the talking points that they're giving people are very misleading. And this is just one policy of the age verification policies. And the way that they're framed is we need this to protect children and empower parents. What all of these bills have in common is they're age gating whatever the tech is. So if it's the app store, or if it's the social media platform itself, or if it's AI chatbots, or sexual content, inappropriate for minors content, all of this is being age gated. And what they do is the policy is going to decide who, minors have to have consent, or they're blocked, or whatever the policy says, from whatever the platform is. So let's just take the App Store Accountability Act for this example. So kids would have to have parental consent to be able to download an app. How do they know who is a child? Well, they're going to have to get the age verification data of every person who's going to download an app. The bill also requires them to establish a parent-child link so that the parent is then giving permission to that child account. So what none of these bills, none of them say what specific information the company will have to collect, how they will have to protect it. Can they share it? Can they sell it? Most of the time, these are not outlined in the policy. And so that the companies then get to decide for themselves. And because of the legal enforcement mechanism built into these policies, these platforms are going to over-collect data to make sure that they're in compliance with the law. Now, here's something a lot of people aren't thinking about when, a lot of people say, well, yeah, kids should have to have parental consent to download an app. Fair enough. I agree. With my kids, I used the Apple family. And so they had to request to download things through the Apple family, and I could, refuse or allow it. So I'm in agreement with that. But if we're going to require this through the App Store, where everybody has to prove their age, so we're going to have to give some sort of data to show the age of our child. Mm-hmm. What is that data? Is that a birth certificate? Is it a social security number? The bills don't specify, so it's up to the platform to decide. As a mom, is it my right to hand over my child's sensitive data? Let's say my child's 6 and I upload her birth certificate to some third party that's collecting this data. Where does it go? Mm-hmm. Who's keeping it? Who gets it? And then there's continuous monitoring of this data because there's age brackets, right? So there might be 13 and under, and then there's 13 to 15 and 16 to 18. So like, hopefully your wheels are starting to turn right now, where you realize like this is a mess. And there's really no safe way for them to do this. And parents are willingly like saying, yeah, I think this is a great idea. And that means that everybody is going, once they pass these bills, everybody's going to have to upload their age verification, their sensitive data, and it could be biometrics, it could be your passport, driver's license, and the platforms get to decide.
Wow. I mean, it's like parenting the parents. I like what you said about, it makes sense for parents to have some kind of controls. I think parents should have a lot of controls. Um, I don't know if that needs to be done through apps. If you have your child's phone, I don't know. There seems like there are ways that already exist to monitor and restrict how much access you're giving to your children. And to take that out of parents' hands and put it in a third party, I guess, approval mechanism. Yeah, you open it up to all kinds of information that third party could request in order to do their verification. And I had the same concern. I felt like it was a rather it almost seemed too frivolous to post and talk about it, but I'm kind of glad I did. I posted a video talking about my experience with Etsy recently.
Mm-hmm.
Not to get into that, but what I thought when I was asked for biometric data in order to access something that was a normal part of online commerce previously that didn't require biometrics, I thought, well, who's the company that does the scan and where does my data go? Because now I've given you an awful lot of information about me. And I don't trust that it's just going to Etsy or just going
Mhm.
to the App Store, whatever that is. I don't know where you put that and who's banking all that information. It kind of reminds me of the 23andMe thing where people were really happy to send in their
Mhm.
DNA sample. And I always thought that's just crazy because I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
sure, it'd be really interesting to have all that information, but somebody's compiling all that data.
Yep.
And I'm really uncomfortable with that.
What do you think the end game is, Julie? Like, what's the end? Because I feel like these kinds of bills on the surface, it's one thing. Yes, we want to keep everyone safe or whatever, but there seems to be a political end game or an end game of control. I mean, what do you think that might be with
I
all
think
these
it's
bills?
a full. I think this is sort of the. It's already happening, obviously, as Leslie just mentioned with
Yeah.
Etsy. So it's already happening, right? But this would actually make it law, it would mandate it. And this is kind of, as I see it, this is a gateway to, okay, you're getting people to willingly give up their ID in the name of protecting children, which it doesn't do that. So one of the things with the App Store bill is children will let's say you give your child permission to download Snapchat. All of the in-app dangers are still there. It didn't
Hmm.
change the Snapchat platform. So you're not really protecting kids in that way. But anyway, they're taking these policies and they're using them to get people to willingly give up this ID to protect the children. And I think once they've done that, then they expand it to
Hmm.
your medical records, all of
Hmm.
that is going to be through digital ID. And I don't want to open a can of worms here, but with the Save Act, there's some
Yes.
stuff in the Save Act that really creates this big identification structure that's far greater than I think what people were pitched as we show your ID to vote, which I think
Yes.
most of us are on board with that. But what's actually in the bill is a lot more than just proving your citizenship when you go to vote.
What is
So I
the
think
SAVE
all of these
Act? Could you
things
say
are
a little bit
building
about
this.
that?
What's that?
The SAVE Act. What is that? I'm ignorant on this.
The Save Act, so there's two. There's Save Act and there's Save America Act, and they both really kind of do the same thing. They're trying to get one of them over the finish line. When the Save Act was introduced last year, the idea was that you would have to prove citizenship to vote. And I don't know about you all, but here in Florida, I vote in person. So I show my driver's license and I sign something, and then I get my ballot and I go vote. And so that's kind of what the original Save Act was: is that you would show a picture or whatever that is, and then you would vote. The new Save Act has a bunch of it's building this huge database based off of Real ID is really the framework that they're using to build this database. And they've linked it up with DHS, and DHS has a saved database for immigrants. And there's going to be a 24/7 monitoring of this new infrastructure if this act passes between state and the federal government with people's ID. So it
Wow, that's really ominous.
yeah, and I think like it reminds me of what they're doing with the age verification bills, where they're using Protect Kids to push these bills through. The SAVE Act is like, protect election integrity. We have to pass this. And so everybody, it sounds like a good idea. Nobody wants to be the person that's, saying, no, we don't want this. But there's some, like they're clearly building the framework. And that's exactly what we're seeing with the online policies as well.
Well, and it seems like just kind of getting back to the age verification, although I'm happy to talk and hear more about the SAVE Act. That's really concerning. But one of the things that I think makes this message so important is that a lot of people don't have kids or have already raised their kids. And when they hear age verification for, protecting children, they just kind of tune that out and they think, right. Like I was just seeing in the chat, like, I'm so glad I don't have kids yet. Or somebody said I wouldn't bring kids into this world. And that's sort of like this way of saying, well, that doesn't really impact me. Thank God it doesn't impact me. I'm not a parent of little kids. But that the whole point of what you're saying is this is using children as as the excuse to tighten the screws on everyone. So this is not about children. This is just children get to be the excuse for why we're doing it.
Yep. Yeah, and it will impact every user that uses whatever if it's AI chatbots, if it's the App Store, if it's social media platforms. There's COSA, it's keeping kids safe on social media. It bans kids under 13 from using social media. It's basically the same thing as what they did in the UK. Well, how do you ban kids 13 from being on social media? You have to know how old everybody is. And how do you know how old everybody is? You've got to get everybody's data. And so I think that's like, you got to hand it to them. It's very clever. Because you do get people like that are like, oh, well, thank God my kids are all over 18 now, or, I'm glad I don't have kids. This is going to impact every single user. And that's what is so scary about it. And the other thing is, Republicans are typically the party that talks about parental rights. Well, with this system, you're mandating parents into a certain way of, protecting their kids online. They can't choose to use device level controls or controls in their house through, it's all going to be controlled by the government. So you've really taken away the parents' choice in how they're going to protect their kids in this digital world that we live in.
Well, and I was looking up this quote because maybe late January, Shabana Mahmood in the UK, the Home Secretary, said she wanted a panopticon of digital surveillance so that the eyes of the state can be on you at all times. She just called for this. This is the Home Secretary. They're this is not being hidden. This is not.
That's an outrageous thing to say publicly. I mean, that's
unlike here in the US where we have Super Bowl ads for you to use your Ring to search for lost puppies. That's a much more palatable way to have surveillance.
Right. But the fact that she would say this kind of,
I know, she just comes right out and says it.
That she thinks that people are ripe for it because she assumes she can get away with saying that. Whereas I think 20 years ago, if somebody had said something that creepy, there would be a massive public outcry.
I mean, I think this is also partly why when we've talked about this here, a lot of these other kind of cultural arguments and fights and unrest, it sort of blinds you from seeing this other stuff that's more
Yes.
damaging in the long term. So it's like that person's able to say such an outrageous comment because a majority of the people are not paying attention to that. Everyone's running around screaming about social justice. I mean, I do too, but at the end of the day, while we're looking to the right, something much more nefarious is happening on the left, that will have further implications for us from now until till the end of whenever. I mean, there is no end to it, apparently. So that's what I think really it sits with me in a really, I feel very uneasy about that, because I feel like these things are happening behind the scenes. People are able to say these things because nobody's paying attention. We're looking in other directions. We're fighting with each other. There's a lot of, in-party fighting on all ends of the spectrum at this point. No one's paying attention. That's why I think what you're doing, Julie, is so important. And because there needs to be a level of awareness raising to understand what people are doing. No, and nobody reads a full bill or a full proposition before they vote yes or no. They just don't. I mean, these things are complicated. Sometimes it's hard to understand. The language in there sometimes makes it look one way when it's something else. I mean, just voting for state propositions is like that, here in California. So it's dangerous.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's by design, right? Like if they give the bill some nice sounding title,
yes,
then like the App Store Accountability Act. Yeah. Let's hold big tech accountable. That sounds great. Hold big tech accountable, protect the kids. We're all for it. And nobody read the bill, right? Because most people don't. Even these lawmakers, they're voting, they have hundreds of bills that they have to deal with every session. And so they can't, so they're dependent upon their staff or lobbyists to make these decisions. And, when I went to the Florida legislature a couple weeks ago and testified against our bill here, I was really pleased because the committee genuinely was concerned about the concerns that I brought to them. And they asked me questions and they really wanted to understand why the bill is bad. They did vote unanimously to pass it out of the committee. However, I'm not doing a victory dance yet, but it has not been scheduled for its next committee. And I think this is the last week that it would be eligible. And so it looks like it's not going to move forward. So that's good. That would tell me that hopefully what the information that I gave them, plus, they passed this law in Texas in 2025 and it got blocked by the courts in December and wasn't able to take effect in January. So why are all these other state legislatures moving fast forward with these policies when the courts have already put a stop to, many, not just Texas, but some of the other ones that are similar to it?
Nichama Gluck, thank you for the super chat. It says, one of the few independent journalists who has been doing the very comprehensive reporting on these things is Ephrat Fenixon. I would highly recommend inviting her for a conversation if you're able. Is that someone you've heard of, Julie?
I have not.
Okay, maybe it would be a good person to learn more about. Thank you very much for the recommendation. I think this is it's interesting what you said about how people are kind of, there's a problem. We all hear this problem, reaction, solution. That's like the government's favorite thing.
Mm-hmm.
But so there is a problem. Social media is bad for kids. You can kind of just do a full stop right there if you want, but you can go on and talk about how it's bad for kids. And online porn is terrible for kids. And so there are reasons we're concerned about this, but the way that these bills are written and what you're describing here and what I've seen with regard to age verification, it's very Brer Rabbit. It's like, please don't throw me in the briar patch, like we're designing our own punishment. Oh, please don't put us over there. Meanwhile, that's the only thing that's being put forward. And it's actually a punishment in name only because it comes with lots of reward for big tech. I mean, this
Absolutely.
increases that panopticon. And I know a lot of people are really concerned about Palantir. And what do you know about how all of this connects back to a centralized hub? Do you know anything about that?
Well, I can tell it. So maybe you guys heard last week, Discord announced that beginning in March, they're going to start universal age verification across the globe, right? Because you've got this patchwork of laws that have been passed in other countries. And so they're just rolling it out universally. So if you choose not to upload your digital ID, then you will be stuck in a teen account. Now, can you imagine predators stuck in a teen account?
Wow.
Wow, that's terrible.
So I'll bookmark that. But so my point to that is they're using a third-party company called Persona, and Persona is somehow connected to Palantir.
Persona is the same company Etsy uses, by the way.
Okay.
A lot
so
of
I
these
think
little
Palantir is probably
yeah.
like at the top of the pyramid, and then at the top of the org chart, and then all these others flow out from Palantir.
Is ID Me also connected to Palantir?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay.
Well, I use ID Me. My gosh, I never even considered all of this, but I use ID Me to get onto, different, to like re-register my car. I mean, things like that you can do online using ID Me. So I never even considered, geez.
I think that's the whole goal, right? Is that they'll have these really useful services that people like, they sound safe probably, right? And so you're like, so we sign up voluntarily. But I think not enough people are signing up voluntarily for some of these things. So that's why they're going to have to put out these mandates.
Well, this is one of the things I think is so important about these kinds of discussions. When we were talking about, when we were speaking last time, Julie, we talked about the airport body scanners, and this is a response that we got in the comments under that video. I never go through the body scanners either. My husband finds it annoying because he has to sit on the other side while I get felt up. But I'd rather be felt up than have radiation shot through my body and someone on the other side looking into my body as I get an X-ray. I think it's absolutely absurd that people line up like sheep to the slaughter to go through these things. I have a relative that flies for business many times a year, and he recently got sudden stage 4 cancer in his lymph nodes. Coincidence? Maybe, but why take that risk? Now, I don't know what the harm is of the body scanners. I don't know that it is harmful. I don't claim that it is harmful, but I do think that it is an invasion. That whole process is such an invasion of your privacy as a citizen that and my thing is just opt out every chance that you get. Opt out every chance that you get while you still can. So opt out of the facial recognition thing at the airport. You still can. And this is the thing with a lot of these technologies and these policies, people don't even realize that they can opt out, and that's why they're presented in this way. It's just classic consumer psychology. You just don't tell people that they have an option, and you ask them to do something, and most people will just go ahead and do it. Maybe they'll sigh and feel inconvenienced, but they'll go ahead and do it. And I remember this as a young mom as well. I didn't know that I could opt my children out of vaccines. The pediatrician was very forceful, and when I would question it, they would say, well, they just need them. So my girls got all of their shots, when even though I was concerned about the number of shots. So it wasn't until later I found out, oh, you can opt out. So these kinds of conversations show you what is optional sometimes, I think. David LeBoy says there are no citizens, Leslie, only subjects.
Yeah.
True.
Well, there's this new, I don't know if anybody's heard of it, but it's called the Intuit Dome. So Intuit owns it. And it's where the Clippers play basketball. It's like their new stadium or whatever, indoor. And you have to actually, to go to a game, you have to download the app onto your phone and then upload your ID or whatever it is, and it captures your face, and you have to upload a credit card. So you do all of that. And I did this, I did all of it. I'm guilty of it, but I just went to the game with friends, and that's what we did. So you walk in there and you actually don't need your wallet or anything, because after you've done that, everything in the stadium is facial recognition. So if you want to go and get candy from the little store, a concession stand or something, You walk in, you grab the candy, and you walk out. You don't even stand in front of something. I mean, I think you walk in and it clicks your face or something. That's it. But you don't pull out a card. You don't pull, these cameras are literally watching you go in there, pick out your food, and then leave. And then, you'll look on your phone and you get a ding that you've been charged for buying licorice or whatever it was. And so that's like the new thing that I think is going to be coming down the pike with all of these other, building of stadiums and all of these amazing technological things. And I got very concerned. I ended up getting a phone call from the basketball team saying, "Hey, we noticed you haven't bought tickets this season. Would you like to buy some tickets now?" And I thought, who the hell is tracking whether or not I'm buying tickets to go to the game? And then I thought, oh my gosh, I did this whole downloading the app. They have my face. They had my credit card information. They know exactly what I bought, where I sat, the route I took when I walked to the bathroom, all of it. I mean, there's nobody there working in the concession stands because it's all just captured through your face and your credit card. That's it. I mean, it's absolutely crazy.
I think that's terrifying.
Yeah.
I think you're right though. Like that's going to become the norm for stadiums and things like that. And I think a lot of people need to really start asking themselves, what's your line in the sand? Like,
exactly.
Where do you say no?
Yeah, exactly. Which, going back now, I probably wouldn't have been that comfortable saying yes to doing it, but it's already out there now. I don't know how that, will come back and bite me later, but I think it's true. You have to decide if it's more important to you to go see a game and to be entertained. I mean, that's why when they attach it to these things, attaching these bills to kids and their safety, attaching it to, something that's, entertaining and cool, and look at this new technology we have. It's so much easier to be susceptible to fall into that trap.
Well, Julie, when you say that this is unconstitutional, what rights to privacy do we have? And how are these things unconstitutional? When are they permissible? When is it permissible in the course of doing business to require this much from people? And when is it not permissible?
We can't deny people access to these free speech platforms because they won't give up, a certain, like the government can't do that. And I think maybe we talked about this when we did the podcast, is that like if a platform like Etsy, if they want to do it voluntarily, or like Discord, they can do that. And that's not unconstitutional because they're a private business, so they can do that. But when the government says, this is what you have to do to access this kind of because it's like going to the library. If you want to go to it would be like them saying you can't go to the library unless you do these things. And that's basically what they're trying to do now with the internet. And it's really, what is it, like 30 plus years, 40 years, however old the internet is. Now we're in 2026 and they want to go back and make rules for the game that's already gotten way out of hand. And so sorry, I totally got off script with your question, but yeah, you can't limit people's access to speech, even in an online format. And so that's really what they're doing, is they're gating your access to these platforms by saying you must provide this if you're going to be able to access the platform. And that's really what Texas, the judge with Texas ruled, is this is, against the First Amendment. But, one of the things I've been thinking a lot about, even since you and I chatted last, Leslie, is just that what part of our child's data do we as parents of minor children have a right to be surrendering to these third-party apps? I mean, do children have, and I think the answer is yes, but don't children have a right to the privacy of their data? And we're giving that up without their consent. Also they can get on Roblox or whatever.
Well, and it makes sense within the context of speech that there would be some that we would be constitutionally protected from those kinds of mandates. But what about commerce? Do you have a sense of that? Like when we talk about something like was it the Knicks game, the basketball
the
team
Clippers,
game,
yeah.
the Clippers game. That's, we can look at that and we can, it's similar. It's similar to the age verification thing. Oh, well, that's not for me because I don't have children. Well, that's not for me because I don't care if I have to give up going to basketball games or whatever. But when it becomes your grocery store,
Yes.
Right.
when it becomes necessary in order to even like next level necessities like furniture shopping or things that we all agree that people tend to need and buy, that are not luxuries, that are not maybe I don't need to shop on Etsy or sell on Etsy. I can choose a different place because I have options. But when the market becomes monopolized by forces that require this much surveillance, what do we have a right to privacy in conducting our commerce? Do we have any commercial privacy as American citizens? Do you know that answer, Julie?
Yeah, I'm just pulling up my notes from that. Because there is, I want to say there's, in addition to the First Amendment, we also have Fourth and so the Fourth Amendment, because that's here you have compelled disclosure of sensitive identity information.
Mhm.
And so because this is requiring this age, the sensitive data, and without probable cause, without a warrant, that would cause the Fourth Amendment concerns. And then, the 14th Amendment pertaining to parental rights, that could also apply here as well, because parents don't have, like, it's a government mandate. So parents don't get to opt out of it. They can't say, I don't want this for my child. I have something else that I'm using over here that I like and it works better. Every parent will have to opt into this. So this is really big daddy government coming in and saying, I know how to parent better than you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Another person who responded to the video that we put up, Julie, says, I have a really important question. How, where do I find out when or what laws are being considered locally for me? How do I find out how to engage in this, especially since the powers that be are intentionally obfuscating them from us? So what do you suggest?
And
for
that's
people?
really difficult because there aren't a lot of like citizen activist groups that really target public policy like this. Since our family had our issues in Washington state, that's why it became a big passion for me. It is difficult. And I've looked at different legislatures at state level across the country, and they all do it a little bit differently. And some of it is easier to use than others, but none of it makes it like intuitive to find things that you're concerned about, because the bills are named things that you might read the name of a bill and you're like, well, that doesn't really apply to me. It's not an issue I'm concerned about. But if you understood what the bill actually would do if it became law, then you'd be like, oh, I am concerned about that. So I would say really what I encourage people to do if they're wanting to get engaged at a local level and with policy is to kind of figure out like, what's the issue that you're most passionate about? Is it these tech policies? Is it parental rights? Is it the Second Amendment? What's kind of your passion? And then you can start, kind of searching your legislature for those policies. And then you're just going to have to manually sort through them. These age verification laws, like I said, it's like playing whack-a-mole. And many of them, like last night, I just found one in Arizona that was filed at the end of January. And it's, yesterday was the 15th of February, and I'm tracking these really closely. So I'm surprised that it got away from me for over 2 weeks. And sometimes by the time you figure out that the bill has been introduced and is moving throughout the process, it's too late, right? Like it's been passed. Like Alabama passed theirs really fast. And that's one of the things they're trying to do is pass them quietly and quickly.
Before people have
citizens
a chance
understand
to respond.
what they do. But that would be my advice is to, if it's your state legislature or city or county council, go to the website, figure out what kind of issues you really want to track, and then just start digging through it.
Are there groups that compile this information for people? I'm citizen groups. I mean, I don't know what Conservative Ladies does. Do you do any of that kind of work?
Yeah, that's basically what we do. So you can check out our website, conservativeladiesofamerica.com. We also have a Substack, which is conservativeladiesofamerica.substack.com. And we're constantly putting out bill information, bill alerts for states, across the country. It's everything from what's going on with ICE. And we even deal with some of the vaccine stuff, some of the medical stuff, especially with you've got these blue states creating like the West Coast Health Alliance, and they're doing all these things to resist what's going on at the CDC. So we cover stuff like that. We really cover, well, our 5 issues are First Amendment, Second Amendment, parental rights, education, and the right to life. So those are kind of our core issues. And we're constantly putting out bill alerts and analysis. Our goal is really to make it make sense to the average citizen, so that you don't feel like you're reading, legislative-ese that doesn't make sense to you. And how will this impact me and my family if this becomes law?
Tibia says, reading bills and making them understandable sounds like a good use case for AI. That's interesting. I'm not a big fan of AI, but I could see that would actually be quite useful.
It's actually very helpful, and helpful in finding, comparing different laws. We've been doing a lot of that with these age verification laws.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Wow. Oh, so much to think about. It's I have you guys ever seen this movie called The Hunt for the Wilder People?
Mm-mm.
I totally recommend it. It's a really, really sweet movie. It's really beautiful and cool. And I saw it in 2016, and then we watched it last night. I wanted to show the kids, and they loved it too. But
Can you repeat the title, The Hunt for the
Wilder People? And it takes place in New Zealand. And it's these people who live out rural. They're right on the edge of the bush. They're right near this massive, massive forest. And I won't give away the plot points or anything, but the 2 main characters end up kind of off in the bush. They get stuck out there for some reason, and then they find out that they are being hunted by the state because they are missing people now.
Oh.
And so there's this pursuit that occurs, and it goes on for a long time. And for me, one of the really dreadful aspects of this story is how hard the state hunts to keep people from being private. And that's kind of an unintentional message of the movie. It's sort of a feel-good movie in a way, but the people who are hunting them are kind of bumbling and kind of comical in some ways. So that's not the message it's trying to send, but that's the message I get, because at the end, no, I won't give away anymore, but you see this massive show of force in order to track down people who are missing. And that, in thinking about this conversation that we were going to have today and watching that theme really stood out for me, that there's this right to privacy is completely going away. And I also think about the whole immigration issue and how it might be in some ways similar to this age verification issue. They kind of sneaking in a lot more control under the guise of doing something that you would want them to do anyway. Like, I'm very concerned about the massive numbers of illegal immigrants that have come through. I think this is a disaster. I can see lots of ways in which this is really bad for communities, for the country at large, even for the people who are coming over. I mean, it's just not a good thing. I really don't, I'm very concerned about this. But then when you start to see what some of the scenes we've seen of ICE, I'm not happy that there's an armed SWAT team of people who don't have to identify themselves, who can come and pluck people out. And then we have.
Oops, you froze, Leslie.
Oh, yeah.
That's concerning to me. And I think I'm glitching a little bit. Sorry.
Yep.
Internet. Yeah. So I'm concerned about the increase in military force used against people on the streets of our country. And I'm also concerned about what this will do to tightening identity verification regulations under the guise of making sure that we're citizens. What more will we be put through in order to rule out the illegal immigrant? I can see how this could be very bad. The solutions seem like they're just as bad as the problem.
Well,
Good sister,
you
bad
know what they
sister
say,
says our
never let a good
sanctuaries.
crisis go to waste.
That's right. Well, good sister, bad sister is saying sanctuary cities, are they better, Leslie? And I don't think so, but I don't think that we have to, this is like, well, is it better to let 9-year-olds watch porn or make everybody give their ID online? That's a false dichotomy. There are other ways to manage these things. There are other ways to do this. And we're just, this is one of my concerns, is that these problems come up, and like you said, Julie, never let a crisis go to waste. So we find new ways to create increased control, increased government power out of, and what I would like to see most is smaller government.
What do you think, Julie, that some of the costs will be to decreased privacy? Like, how will that decreased privacy impact people negatively? Do you imagine?
That's, I mean, I think there's a lot of, I think we're going to be under surveillance. And so there's going to be a lot of our, the things that you can say and do online are going to, potentially, I think this is where it's headed ultimately, is that you will be censored. I mean, think about what happened on Facebook and Twitter back in, during COVID, how conservatives were really censored, or anyone who spoke out against the narrative. I think we're going to see a lot of that. Like, you could just have your account, totally deleted. You have no access to your account if you're saying things that go against government, whatever the narrative is. We've already seen recently, and I've looked enough to verify that I believe this is beyond just being reported. I believe this is actually happening, but I haven't actually seen the warrant itself. DHS has supposedly asked Meta, Instagram, and some of these platforms for information about accounts that are speaking out against ICE. And they want that data. So I think those are the kinds of things that we're going to see. I also think we're going to get to a point where everything that you do is connected to whatever this, however this digital ID framework ends up, becoming, once it's all fully rolled out. I think we're going to be limited on the things that we can buy. How's your social behavior score is going to dictate, can you buy gas this week? Can you buy groceries this week? Oh, you already bought your gallon of milk this week. I think we're going to see a lot more government involved in our everyday lives, which,
or maybe
Leslie
something like, we're freezing, you said these things online, we're just going to freeze your bank account for a week.
Right.
That kind of thing. I mean, I could potentially, it's so dystopian, but I don't think it's beyond imagination.
No,
not at all. I mean, Christine was just talking about the dystopian, going to, a basketball game and how dystopian that was. And, to me, like, hearing her describe that, it's like, that sounds so futuristic. And yet here we are. And it's happening. So I don't think you're far off at all.
Yeah. And it's interesting. I think when people are happy, this is one of the things about partisan politics that always disturbs me, is that people are very happy to see tighter controls inflicted against people who say things they don't like, but they don't often have the foresight to realize that the next time it's somebody in power who doesn't like you, now those controls are in place to control you. So I think, maybe hearing that there are accounts who are speaking about ICE in a particular way or getting targeted, that might make a lot of people feel positive, because they're worried about all these protesters against ICE and the pro illegal immigration crowd and what that stands for. But on principle, this is something much, much bigger. What was the name of the group that you said was sponsored by Meta? It's something like Digital Childhood Alliance?
Yes, that's exactly it.
What can you say a little bit more about that? Because that sounds really, really concerning.
Yeah, so the Digital Childhood Alliance started in January of 2025. The founder is a woman named Melissa McKay, and she is a mom from Utah, and she's the architect of the App Store Accountability Act. And Meta has been funding the Digital Childhood Alliance, and they quickly created these coalitions of parent groups and a lot of protecting kids, protecting, against sex trafficking and things like that, and against pornography and those types of organizations. And then what they did is they had they put this model policy, right? So this piece of legislation that they want in every state and at a federal level, they pushed it out to a lot of these parent groups, like Moms for Liberty was one of them. A bunch of them in Utah. Utah seems to be ground zero for these policies, which is interesting to me. So they pushed it out to all these parent groups, and then they've got moms writing op-eds in their local papers in support of this bill and how it protects children and it empowers parents. And I don't know if they've read the bill and they don't understand it, or if they're just taking the talking points that they were handed by Digital Childhood Alliance. But when you actually take those talking points and give the rebuttals to them, people like open their eyes and they're like, oh, I didn't really understand that that's what it was going to do. And so Melissa is also with, did I already say this, Family Policy Alliance? And so she is working with a lot of these big think tanks, like Heritage Foundation. Heritage Foundation is working on this as well. And so you get people on the right who maybe follow these groups or think tanks and trust them. And so they, oh, well, if Heritage is supporting this, if Moms for Liberty is supporting this, then it must be good. It must be for parental rights.
Right.
And Melissa doesn't, I've never even engaged with Melissa, but she's blocked me on X. I guess I always think I usually never block anybody as long as they're respectful and stuff. And I'm always willing to engage in a debate about an issue. And if I really believe in my position on an issue, then I'm not afraid to debate somebody. So the fact that she blocked me just says she doesn't want to have that interaction, which is fine. But they have, when you go to these hearings, when these bills have these hearings, someone from Meta is always there to testify in support of them. And the guy from Meta went after me in Florida. And one of the things that he said is that the parental controls that already exist in Apple and Android for app stores automatically boot kids off on the day they turn 13. And that is false. That is untrue. If you've had an Apple family plan or an Android family plan, which my husband is Android and I'm Apple, so we've used both of them, and your child doesn't get out of your family until you let them out of the family. They don't automatically get booted out on their 13th birthday. So I thought that was really, and the next time I give testimony, I will speak to that in my testimony in case that's one of their talking points again. But, and these legislators, they don't know. They're not experts on parental controls on these devices, so they don't know. So big tech, it's like I said, it's a win for Meta, because if you push the age gating down to the device, to the app store level, then Meta's off the hook. They don't have to do anything. They don't have to change their platform. You've pushed all that down to Apple and Google, and now Meta is off the hook.
And data on users really is the currency of these systems. So It's a massive win for them.
Huge.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Julie, for joining us for this conversation. do you want a final word on any recommendations or where people can find you? What would be, if you just had to tell people really quickly, what's most important for people to know, and also where to find your work online?
The most important thing for people to know is that these bills do not protect children and they do not empower parents. They give that it's a government mandate and it infringes upon the privacy of every single American. And this is like every policy. This is not going to stop with what we see right now. This is just the door opening further, and it will continue to expand. And so it's really important that citizens push back against this. And people can find me on X. I'm pretty active on X, and I tweet a lot about these policies, and it's Julie C. Barrett is my X handle, and then conservativeladiesofamerica.com, and that's our Substack as well.
Well, thank you so much for joining us. I hope people will go and check out your work and get involved in this issue, because it's really quite serious and it's going to affect everybody.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's been fun to chat with you, and I appreciate you helping get the word out.
Absolutely. And, as you were talking about Utah, I thought about our friend Carrie Bartholomew, who does a lot of work on Utah, what's going on there, parents' rights. So maybe at some point we can have you back on and have Carrie on and have another dialogue, because I'd love to keep this dialogue going and help in any way we can support the work that you're doing in the outreach. So thank you, Julie.
That'd be great.
Everybody, thank you so much for joining us today in the live stream, and go check Julie out, and make sure you remember to like the video, because that's really helpful, and leave a comment.